Hi, my name is Stevie and I like to write songs. Wow, I cannot believe it's Christmas jumper time already. Yeah. This time last year I was still procrastinating and making excuses and daydreaming about putting content up on YouTube. I can't believe we're almost a year into it, and I'm really looking forward to next year to see what happens next year. Today I thought I'd set myself a songwriting challenge. A lot of people talk about the axis chord sequence and talk about what a cliche it is and how they would never use it. Now, there must be some reason why it's so widely used and why songwriters really like this as a chord sequence. You know, in music in general, it's not uncommon for certain styles of music to have certain chord sequences that they use a lot, and it's almost as if the chord sequence doesn't matter. It's what you play over the top of it that matters. I'm thinking, for example, in blues, a blues guitar player might find that most of the time he plays over a 12-bar blues sequence. So it's not really about the chord sequence. It's about the other things that go on top of it. Quite often hear a lot of jazz players exclusively spending most of their time in 2-5-1 chord sequences. So from that point of view, maybe using the axis chord sequence as a starting off point for a song is not such a bad idea. Let's try it and find out, will I find it very limiting or will I find it freeing to not have to think about the harmony? It'll certainly be an interesting test. So today I'm going to attempt to write a straightforward rock song based on the axis chord sequence. Let's go. I'm always working on at least one song at any one time. If I'm not working on a song, then I feel pretty bad about myself. Sometimes when I'm working on a song, it's in the back of my mind that this song will be finished soon and I need another song to work on. So I'm always on the lookout for ideas for songs. Now, these ideas don't have to be anything special. They just have to act as some kind of catalyst to get the creative process flowing. Normally, I like to have some kind of lyrical idea. For me personally, the most important lines in a song are the main line in the chorus and the very first line of the first verse. If I have one of those two lines, then I've got a song that I can start working on. Sometimes it'll be a musical idea that I'll have to get me started, maybe a chord sequence or a riff. But either of those things will get me started. Today I don't have any musical ideas, I just have two lyrical ideas. As I said, the main line in the chorus and the first line of the verse. So that's what I have to get started today. So in the absence of any musical ideas, I thought it might be interesting today to try and set myself a musical challenge and use the most cliched and overused chord sequence in songwriting history, the axis chord sequence. And I'll use that as my kicking off point for the song. Maybe I'll be able to drop that chord sequence after I get further into the song, or maybe that'll stay as a feature in the song. But let's have a look at it. This is the axis chord sequence. Chord 1, chord 5, followed by chord 6, followed by chord 4. It was made very famous in a well-known comedy sketch called The Axis of Awesome. You should definitely check it out just to see how many songs in popular music use this chord sequence. But what does 1, 5, 6, 4 actually mean? Let's try and break it down. Well, first of all, we have to pick a key. If we pick the simplest key of, say, C major, the 1 chord is C because that is the first chord in our key. And if we count up through the letters of the alphabet, C, D, E, F, G, when we get to 5, we get to a G chord. So let's do that. And when we get to 6, we get to A. Let's come back to that in a minute. And when we get to 4, we get to F. So what's interesting here is that I've written the Roman numerals for the 6th chord in lowercase letters. That denotes that it should be minor. So what we have is a chord sequence here of C into G into A minor into F. You'll immediately recognize that as a very standard, commonly used chord sequence. And this is the axis chord sequence. Now, many people have tried to theorize why this chord sequence is so popular and so good, and I think there are some very obvious traits that this chord sequence has that we can look at to show just why it's so infectious. First of all, it's in a major key, so it's got quite a standard, straightforward pop music sound to it. It starts off on the 1 chord, and it ends on the 4 chord, so the repeat from the 4 chord back to the start is what we call a plagal cadence. Now, a perfect cadence would give a lot of finality to that chord sequence, and it wouldn't loop as effectively because it would keep sounding like it was coming to an end. But the plagal cadence here lends itself very well to constant repetition. It's got a very infectious, repetitive effect. Another thing that I think is interesting about the axis chord sequence is the way we have a C, and an A minor. Now, if we read very simple, repetitive melody, what typically tends to happen in this chord sequence is that whatever phrase we sing over the C, we typically end up playing a very similar phrase over the A minor. And this causes a modal shift. So we hear the phrase sang over the major chord, and then we hear the same phrase sang over the minor chord. So it adds variety and harmonic spice to the track in a very simple way that is very effective. I mentioned the perfect cadence there. Perfect cadence is when we go from the 5 chord to the 1 chord, and nowhere in this chord sequence do we hear a 5 chord followed by a 1 chord. And that is also very important. So if we look, the chord sequence goes from C to G, and then you might expect a C afterwards, but instead you hear its relative minor, which is A minor. So this is like a surprise cadence. We expect the G to be followed by a C, but instead it's followed by an A minor, which is a very subtle surprise in the music. And then instead of going to the 5 to come home again, we go to the 4 to come home. So it's got a very understated functionality in its harmony, but it's still very useful functionality in its harmony. So that's why I think it loops so effectively and infectiously. Let's get started with my template here in Reaper. So the first thing I like to do is add a master chain. I have an effects chain here called Standard Master, which just does some of the things that I always seem to do in every track. So a bit of a boost around the kick drum, bit of a cut around the low mid, a little bit of air band frequency added to the top, and then followed by a mastering channel, which has parallel compression and a limiter and stuff like that on it, plus a bit of stereo processing. This is what people typically tend to call top-down mixing. So if I place some EQs and compression and stuff on the master out of my DAW, then everything that I load after that will be affected by this. So I typically not find myself having to cut 500 as much on all the individual instruments. And I typically find myself not having to put as much compression on all the individual instruments. And this is a more efficient way of working. We'll need less plugins in our project if we work this way. And I sometimes like to work the same way with the bus outs as well. So we have the drum bus out, and I'll put compression on that, which saves me from having to compress the individual tracks as much. And I do the same sometimes with EQ on the guitar bus out and the vocal bus out. We're obviously going to need some guitars, bass and drums. So let's load in my instrument presets for these instruments. So with the guitar, I'm going to want to use my rhythm guitar, duplicate the track and pan them left and right. Okay, so that's a basic template that I always start with, and then I load keyboards and vocals as we need them. I'm pretty sure that I'll want strings in this track as well, so my go-to is always String Ensemble 2 on Colossus and Contact Player. We have that sound. So let's have a look at this Axis chord sequence. Let's put that on for now. Okay, so I'll pretty much want that to be fairly straight, and let's use a velocity on all of them of about 80 to keep it nice and even. Okay. So it's quite important at this stage for us to get some kind of idea of a tempo before we start recording any audio. Because as soon as we start recording audio, then we'll have to start time stretching and stuff if we decide on a different tempo. My default tempo is almost always 150. It just feels like a very comfortable tempo for me to play 6 notes per beat when I'm alternate picking on the guitar. So it's a nice, easygoing, straightforward, comfortable tempo for me. Let's hear that. Now, in listening to that, there's 2 things that I want to change. First of all, 1 bar per chord sounds very, very familiar. Maybe a bit too familiar. So I'm going to half the speed of the chords so that if maybe it's not moving as quickly, it'll not be as familiar as the Axis chord sequence. Let's hear what that sounds like first before I go any further. Let's maybe take the whole thing down in velocity a bit more because it's a bit loud. Now, the other thing that we have to think about here is that although I started this in C, and I do want the song to be in C, because I'm tuned to drop C, for me playing a C on the guitar will be down a tone. So this is the key we're probably going to be working on the song in. That's B flat, but I'll be playing it all the time on the bass and the guitar and stuff as if it's in C. Let's loop that and program some drums. It kind of felt like a double speed drum beat. Might be the nice vibe I'm going for at the moment. So I'll put in some bass guitar and guitars just playing diamonds on that with that little push that the drums are doing. Right, so it's all sounding very straightforward so far, nothing really to write home about. But hopefully we'll get into something a bit more interesting as the song progresses. Let's have a look at some lyrical ideas for over the top of this now. I said at the beginning of the video that I had 2 lines for the song, which I think are the 2 most crucial lines in a song. So I've got the very first line in the song, which I think is the line that sort of sets out the goal, the emotional dynamic of the song. My first line is alive but barely breathing. And then later on as a starting point for the chorus, I have the line, a self-inflicted exile, an island for my self-esteem. It just sort of came into my head one day and I just thought, oh, that's a nice line. I'd like to use that in a song. I think this part of the song, we're working on the chorus first and then we'll work backwards and we'll write the verses afterwards. So we'll stick to the chorus for now. And this is what I'm thinking of doing over the top of it. Something like this. Self-inflicted exile, an island for my self-esteem. And then it goes into the next chord. And repeats. Okay, so we need more words. So we need words for this section. Na 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 na. I'm sort of thinking that maybe the song could be about some kind of epiphany, some kind of awakening, waking up from your self-inflicted exile. So something about sleeping. I don't really know if that line makes any sense, sleeping in a smoke machine. We need a rhyme for that. So we could go through the alphabet. B, C, scene, stream. Well, a stream is like a river. Something about that. There's something about stream of consciousness. Not moving in the stream of consciousness. Motionless in jet streams. Sleeping in a smoke machine. Motionless in jet. No, there's not enough syllables. Motionless in something jet streams. Motionless in the warm jet stream. Motionless in cold. A self-inflicted exile. An island for my self-esteem. Sleeping in a smoke machine, motionless in cold jet streams. What's that sound like? Self-inflicted exile, an island for my self-esteem. Sleeping in a smoke machine, motionless in cold jets. Oh, that's cool. I really like it. That's like it's a nice tune. That's the thing about the Axis chord sequence. It always seems to produce really nice melodies. So we need the same thing again then, because it probably would have to be a double repeat. Right, let's try this. I make distractions to cause reactions. That's like one of those lines that gets set up where you say, it starts with I make, so it makes you want to actually, when you write the next line, start again with the same thing. I make distractions to cause reactions. I make again of something else. I just thought of a line there now. I'd be surprised if this line, I make distractions to cause reactions. I make a living to keep from living. That's such a good line, man. I really like it. It's like you're so busy with your job. It's this epiphany thing that we're talking about. And it's like realizing that you've been sleepwalking through life or something, and you've spent so much time working on your job that you haven't actually loved. And working on your job is making a living, but you make a living to avoid living. That's a great, I'm very, very happy with that line. That's great. But those lines sound like they should be in the second part here, in the sleeping in a smoke machine part, right? So we need something for in front of that scans the same as a self-inflicted exile. So this epiphany is part of a search for meaning, a search for a point in your life, hoping, searching, scanning, hoping for some meaning, maybe hoping for a meaning, hoping for a meaning, something to believe in. Hoping for a meaning, something to believe in. I make distractions to cause reactions. I make a living to keep from living. It sounds like we're locked into repeating it again. And although I've talked a lot there about the infectious repetition of this chord sequence, I would like to break out of it and somehow bring this to an ending. What have we got so far? A self-inflicted exile, an island for my self-esteem, sleeping in a smoke machine, motionless in cold jet streams, hoping for a meaning, something to believe in. I make distractions to cause reactions. I make a living to keep from living. The cynic in me denies. What did I just say? The cynic in me denies something. I'm not sure how to spell cynic. The cynic in me denies something. The cynic in me denies what? We could do a wee meta thing about the actual songwriting process, because that's what we're talking about here. The cynic in me denies artistry. The cynic in me denies creativity. I make distractions to I make a living to keep from living. The cynic in me denies creativity. Oh, there's something really cool about the way that line scans as the final line in the song. The cynic in me denies creativity. I was doing these chords where I was going the 4 and the 5. Let's do another cliche where we let the bass descend for that. Oh, actually, no, I don't like that. Maybe we'll go straight into the 6. Make distractions to cause reactions and make a living to keep from. Make distractions to cause reactions. Make a living to keep from living. Cynic. Oh, right, good. Make distractions to cause reactions. Make a living to keep from living. The cynic in me denies creativity. Okay, what have we got? A self-inflicted exile, an island for my self-esteem, sleeping in a smoke machine, motionless in cold jet streams, hoping for a meaning, something to believe in. I make distractions to cause reactions. I make a living to keep from living. The cynic in me denies creativity. Okay, so we've changed the chords a wee bit there, so we're going to have to re-record the music that we've written there. But I think that's a really cool chorus, man. I'm starting to feel excited about this song. Let's check it out. Right, so it did a nice wee thing here with the drums and strings, where we've went staccato. Suppose we can't delay any longer, we'll have to get some vocals down. Let's load up a vocal preset here. I've got my vocal bus here, and on the vocal bus I use a bit of fresh air just to add more sparkle to the vocals. About 20 is a good starting point anyway. I always notice that this plugin makes your track about 1.5 dB louder, so I trim it down here so that I'm not being swayed by the volume lift on this plugin. And all the vocals are basically the same. I use quite a lot of RVox, and I use a pretty standard vocal setting on the Chris Lord Algae, just adding an extra bit of top end to the vocals. Vocals just can't be bright enough as far as I'm concerned, especially when you've got a dull voice like mine, and taking out some of the bottom end.
A self-inflicted exile, an island for my self-esteem, sleeping in a smoke machine, motionless in cogent streams, hoping for a meaning, something to believe in. I make distractions that cause reactions, I make a living to keep from living. The cynic in me denies creativity.
Right, so although I faked up the performance of the vocals there now, that's not really how I recorded it, because there's not really a breath in it, so I recorded it in a couple of passes. I split it up into 4 separate phrases and just recorded those individually. I recorded 3 passes as usual, so I've got double vocals panned left and right, 6 dB quieter. I really think this is crying out for harmonies, so I'm going to try and work on some harmonies now.
Self-inflicted exile, an island for my self-esteem, sleeping in a smoke machine, motionless in cogent streams, hoping for a meaning, something to believe in. I make distractions that cause reactions, I make a living to keep from living. The cynic in me.
So we'll try and go the whole hog and do the full 3-part harmonies for it.
A self-inflicted exile, an island for my self-esteem, sleeping in a smoke machine, motionless in cogent streams, hoping for a meaning, something to believe in. I make distractions that cause reactions, I make a living to keep from living. The cynic in me denies creativity.
I'm getting a bit of a feeling that I might have bitten off more than I can chew with this key, because I want to do an even higher harmony, and that harmony there now was far too high for me.
Self-inflicted exile, an island for my self-esteem, sleeping in a smoke machine, motionless in cogent streams, hoping for a meaning, something to believe in. I make distractions to cause reactions, I make a living to keep from living. The cynic in me denies creativity. Self-inflicted exile, an island for my self-esteem, sleeping in a smoke machine, motionless in cogent streams, hoping for a meaning.
Right, let's try and do the higher harmony. It's gonna be hard.
A self-inflicted exile, an island for my self-esteem, sleeping in a smoke machine, motionless in cogent streams, hoping for a meaning, something to believe in. I make distractions that cause reactions, I make.
Wow. That was very high. That's absolutely at the limit of my voice. I'm just not good at falsetto at all. Let's see them soloed.
A self-inflicted exile, an island for my self-esteem, sleeping in a smoke machine, motionless in cold jet streams, hoping for a meaning, something to believe in. I make distraction.
And then I didn't feel like I needed the high harmony after that. So all together.
A self-inflicted exile, an island for my self-esteem, sleeping in a smoke machine, motionless in cold jet streams, hoping for...
Right, I think all those harmony vocals need tucked in a wee bit. They're all a bit on the loud side. Let's find out where they sit.
A self-inflicted exile, an island for my self-esteem, sleeping in a smoke machine, motionless in cold jet streams, hoping for a meaning, something to believe in. I make distractions and cause reactions. I make a living to keep from living. The cynic in me denies creativity.
I feel at the very end there, that should go into a riff. That's maybe the intro riff of the song. So if we can write a riff here now in the key of C, then and that's what we arrive at the end of every chorus, which would also act maybe as an intro riff. But with the chorus complete, happy days. Well, that was quite enjoyable. It's definitely a rock solid chorus, and I'm very happy with it. Let me know what you think in the comments. I would love to hear what you guys think about it. And as usual, if you find what I'm doing interesting or valuable to you, then please support the channel, like and subscribe, maybe buy me a coffee, do all those things, because I really, really appreciate your input and support. You guys rock.